not believe in love. Love is the most glorious thing of all.
Oh, Charlotte Rose, goodness me. You would say that. I have to tell you, Mary Catherine, a little story that's going round the family. You see, our dear Charlotte Rose has found herself a toy boy.
I suppose he is quite a bit younger than me.
Yes, indeed. Oh, I understand. It's a dalliance, a flirtation. As long as you don't let it go too far.
Oh, but we are in love. Charles and I are very much in love.
Mary Catherine, he is not of the nobility. I mean, this is impossible. What can you be thinking to be wanting to be carried away by this grand... People will talk. And
But
you...
love is love, is it not?
Oh, dear. Gossip will ruin you. I mean, the rumours that are in Versailles, I could tell you, my own reputation has suffered sorely as a result, and the things people say about me, admittedly some are true, but for instance, you will still hear that old tired story that I appeared before the old queen dressed in a peasant costume, a Breton peasant costume before her. No one seems to have noticed that she had died some 4 years before I even came to Versailles when I was 16. And still reputations.
It's not true.
Don't tell me you, but this is what I'm saying. All of these, the worst enemy of all is other women. For the gossip, the rumours, the destruction of reputation, that is the thing that will bring you down in the end.
But surely women have friendships. The friendship between women is so beautiful. It's an extraordinary thing. And in fact, I have a story of my own about friendship between women. Would you like to hear it?
Oh.
Fairer than a fairy. Once upon a time in a kingdom a long time ago, a princess was born. She was so beautiful that the courtiers named her Fairer than a Fairy. And as her parents had to go off to war, Fairer than a Fairy was raised by her courtiers and servants, and she was lonely. And as she grew into her beauty, but she was also very kind, and everybody loved her. Now in a far kingdom, the queen of the fairies, Nabatea, was not a good fairy, and she had heard about this Fairer than a Fairy, and had become enraged with jealousy that someone could be so beautiful but also kind. She decided that she would seek revenge on Fairer than a Fairy and those like her. She set off to Fairer than a Fairy's castle, dressed herself in very simple clothes, and ingratiated herself into Fairer than a Fairy's service. When Nabatea got there, she discovered that the castle was protected by magic, and that nobody within the castle walls could be harmed. So she hatched a plan. In the meantime, Fairer than a Fairy had become very close with Nabatea, and had no understanding of her danger that she was in. One day, all the girls were down in the garden. They were braiding each other's hair and making flower crowns, when Nabatea put on a show. As part of her show, she went out of the gate and into the gardens beyond. Fairer than a Fairy watched her as she went, and as soon as Nabatea went out the gate, she fell. And Fairer than a Fairy ran to her side at once. No sooner had she got there than Nabatea wrapped her in a cloak of black and whisked her away to her own kingdom. When she awoke, Fairer than a Fairy was found in a simple room. She had a straw bed with some bread and water, and soon Nabatea arrived. Nabatea said to her, "Come with me," and took her out into a long corridor and down a set of stairs that went down into the bowels of the earth, and everything was lined with black walls, black stairs, black ceiling. Everything was black. And they got into a big, long gallery that was black, and it was filled with cobwebs. And she said to Fairer than a Fairy, "You must clear these cobwebs, or there will be consequences." And Fairer than a Fairy dutifully moved the cobwebs away, but no sooner had she done that than they reappeared. And she kept persisting for a very long time, until eventually she sat down on the stair and started to cry. When suddenly The room was illuminated with this bright light, and a young man was kneeling at her feet. He said, "I am Phratis. Why do you cry, princess?" And she said, "Oh, the queen has me do this impossible task. I cannot do it." And he said, "Do you trust me?" And she said, "Yes." And so he cleared all the cobwebs away. And she said thank you to him. And he gave her a key. He said, "This key is the key to your freedom. Find the lock." So Fairer than a Fairy returned to her simple room, where she sat down. And suddenly she heard someone crying in the room next door, through the panel. Someone was crying and they were saying, "Oh, I can't turn these acorns into pearls." Fairer than a Fairy went up to the panel and she whispered, "Don't worry, miracles happen here." The voice behind the panel was very surprised. "Who are you?" Fairer than a Fairy said, "I am Fairer than a Fairy. I'm entrapped here because I'm too beautiful." "Me too," said the voice. "I am Princess Désirs. I was meant to marry my love and was whisked away just before it happened." Fairer than a Fairy, we must be friends. But what is it you were saying about acorns?" "Oh, the queen wants me to turn these acorns into pearls, or there'll be consequences." "Oh, Phratis will help," said Fairer than a Fairy. No sooner had she done that than the acorns were turned into pearls. Fairer than a Fairy looked around for a keyhole, and she found it and opened it, and the panel between the two rooms opened, and the two princesses saw each other for the first time. And they looked each other up and down and then embraced. The next day, the queen was enraged to see that both girls had completed their impossible tasks, and so she set them others. She sent Désirs off to write a message on the sand that would never be erased. And she sent Fairer than a Fairy to the foot of Mount Adventurous, where she was to fly to the top of the mountain and get a vase of the water of immortality. The two girls embraced each other before parting. Fairer than a Fairy got to the base of the mountain, and there were feathers and glue there ready for her to make some wings so she could fly to the top of this mountain. But she could see it was all in vain. "Oh, if only Phratis were here," she said, and Phratis appeared. Phratis asked her what she needed to do, and she told him about the task. He turned himself into an eagle, and he said to her, "Do you trust me?" And she nodded and climbed on his back, where he took her up into the heights of the sky and then down to the top of Mount Adventurous, where she got the vase of water. "Oh, if only Désirs were here," she said. And Phratis took her to where Désirs was, desperately trying to write a message on the sand. Phratis used his magic, and soon there was a message there. The two girls sat down companionably and chatted with each other. When the queen found them, she was, of course, enraged, and she sent them on more and more impossible tasks, each time not knowing that her son Phratis was helping the two princesses. On their last such task, Fairer than a Fairy had managed to release the true Queen of the Fairies. You see, Nabote had taken the crown by force and entrapped the true Queen of the Fairies. And Fairer than a Fairy had released her. And so therefore the true Queen was very grateful for Fairer than a Fairy's help. So on their return to the castle, they found Désirs bound to a stake with wood at her feet, ready to be burned. Fairer than a Fairy ran to her friend's side and embraced her and begged the true Queen of the Fairies to release her. Nabote skulked off into a corner, knowing that she had been caught. The true Queen of the Fairies released Désirs and Fairer than a Fairy from their impossible tasks and banished Nabote to ever come back into the kingdom. The two princesses became the best of friends, showing that envy and jealousy has no power over the true friendship between women.
Charlotte, right,
Oh,
realise. You
oh, wonderful story already.
Well, it was just a beautiful story of friendship, I thought. Originally, she did have a love interest with Phratis, but I decided to take that out because, love is important and I love love, but I also think the love between women is very special. And so that's why I took him out of the love interest.
Yes.
Oh, my darling, I wholeheartedly agree with you and applaud you for this wonderful direction that you took in your story, because After all, it's the friendships in our salon that will keep us going. It's the friendships that will keep us strong and make us a force to be reckoned with. The friendship of women. Thank you, Charlotte Rose.